give investors insurance that the right policies are in place so that they feel confident about investing significant amounts of money in the capacity that we need in PNG, because it doesn't matter what you're looking at, PNG needs investment. You know, our people need opportunities, our people need jobs, we need capacity.
Hello and welcome back to Coffee with Lewa. I'm your host, Lewa, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Mr. Stanley Leahy, CEO of Zenag, one of Papua New Guinea's most iconic and beloved brands. Zenag chicken has been a household name for decades, and today we're going to hear directly from the man leading the charge in one of Papua New Guinea's most important agricultural industries. Stanley, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to start with a personal question, just so that our audience can get to know you a little better. Could you begin by telling us a little bit about yourself? Who is Stanley Leahy, and what has your journey been professionally and personally to now leading Zenag Chicken, a brand that so many Papua New Guineans have come to know and love?
Sure. So I grew up in Leigh. I actually grew up at Zenag Farm. It's a family-owned business. My parents are Papua New Guinean, and proudly so. But I went to boarding school and university in Sydney, and then did some external work in Australia, and then also over in Southern Africa in the poultry industry, and returned in 2021 to be the CEO of Zenag.
That's exceptional. It's really good to hear. A lot of people will assume, okay, he's a CEO, he must not be part of the family. So that clarification, I think, will really surprise people, because you're Papua New Guinean and we're always proud to talk about Papua New Guinean businesses, especially PNG owned. So kudos to your family for being an example to many of us out here.
Thank you, Lewa. Well, we share your passion for family businesses, particularly Papua New Guinean family businesses. We need more of them.
Thank you. Hi, friends, and welcome back to the channel. If you know me, you know one thing for sure. Coffee is one of my true passions in life. That's actually one of the reasons why we named this show Coffee with Lewa. Because coffee is more than a drink to us. It's culture, it's community, it's connection, and it's an opportunity. Today, we want to speak directly to our amazing coffee farmers and cooperatives across Papua New Guinea and the Pacific. If you're growing coffee, processing coffee, or part of a cooperative, and you're looking to enter new markets, expand your reach, and connect your beans to the world, we want to hear from you. There's a demand for high quality coffee like yours now more than ever. Whether you're in the Highlands, Sipic, Central, or the Islands and beyond, if you're producing beautiful coffee and want to grow your impact, please reach out. You can contact us directly at info@coffeewithlewa.com. That's info@coffeewithlewa.com, and it's on the screen right now. Let's talk about how we can bring your coffee to new audiences, new buyers, and new possibilities. Together, we can put Papua New Guinea's coffee on more shelves, in more cafes, and in more hearts around the world. Stay blessed, stay bold, and stay with us for more on Coffee with Lewa. Zenag supports over 36,000 SME farms, which is incredible. What are the key success factors for smallholder poultry farmers in Papua New Guinea?
Yeah, so I guess it's not just Zenag, obviously, but the major poultry producers in Papua New Guinea is Zenag and New Guinea tailbirds, and we're also seeing a number of new players coming in with regional hatcheries up in Wewak and also Leahy and Kokopo, which is fantastic. But yeah, that SME sector is an enormous part of the industry. In fact, just under half of the birds produced in Papua New Guinea come from smallhold farmers, and they're smallhold farmers that getting between 50 and 100 birds a week, growing them up for 6 to 7 weeks, and then getting a return on that investment by either selling them in the live markets or trading them locally. So it's a massive sector. The cornerstone of the success for that industry is the fact that PNG is very fortunate to be free of the world's worst avian diseases. So we're free of notifiable diseases like bird flu, Newcastle disease in particular, and that makes it easy for farmers to engage in poultry and successfully and get a good return for their efforts. And of course, the advantage of poultry above most of the other livestock industries is that it's very quick. Farmers can buy a carton of day-old chickens. The two major producers in Papua New Guinea represent the two biggest genetic lines of poultry, so the Ross bird and the cob bird. So farmers have got a good choice between what they want to use. To give you some perspective, when I was working in Southern Africa, they use the same birds as what we're using here. And we bring in genetic stock from New Zealand because New Zealand's very clean from a biosecurity perspective, but that means that we're always keeping up with the world's best poultry genetics, and our customers, the smallhold farmers, also have access to those genetics. But yeah, what we're very concerned about and what we're always talking to the government about is making sure that we maintain that clean disease status, because it's so important for the future of our industry. It's so important for the livelihoods of tens of thousands of Papua New Guinean farmers. We are very lucky to be free of these diseases, but if we don't protect that status, then we're going to lose it. And we've seen the enormous devastation of the coffee berry borer, for example. PNG was one of the few places in the world that didn't have that. Now we've got it, and the industry is really feeling the pinch on that. We've seen the devastation of African swine fever, and again, that was brought in through imported product. We don't want to repeat those mistakes in poultry.
And how does poultry farming help families with limited land access generate income? What support systems are in place?
It's a great question. So I guess one of the really good things about poultry is because birds aren't big, they don't need a huge amount of space. And farmers can scale from local producers, distribute birds in cartons of 50. So that's the smallest amount that they can start with. Some families may split them between a few families, but as they get bigger, as they grow their businesses, they can buy more cartons and build more infrastructure. But you don't need a lot of space to start with. 50 birds doesn't require a huge amount of space. And the other thing is poultry, again, mostly because of the genetics, is incredibly efficient in terms of its feed conversion. So, chickens can convert 1.5 kilos of feed into a kilo of meat very effectively, much better than most of the other livestock industries. So that's as long as farmers have access to birds and have access to stock feed, they don't need a lot of space to get started. And as I said, one of the biggest challenges globally is disease control and mitigation, and we just don't have a lot of that in PNG at the moment. So it's very easy for farmers to farm successfully with not a lot of expertise. But in saying that, the industry is really stepping up. The Poultry Industry Association is conducting training all over the country. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, but we're hitting all the major centres at least once a year. This year so far, they've done Moresby and Wewak. The next one's going to be in Goroka next month. And I certainly encourage. We always get at least 100 farmers or more to those training sessions. We have a broiler booklet. It's available to all farmers. So if anybody wants it, they can request them. FarmSet also has one, which is excellent. But we also, that booklet is readily available on our website if anyone needs it as well. And what that booklet does is talk about basic broiler husbandry. So how to get farmers started in a PNG environment.
That's really good information for our viewers. I believe they'll be really pleased to know that you don't need much space for 50 chickens, right? To start off, that's valuable knowledge.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to know exactly how much space, we've got that information outlined in our very basic broiler booklet, which is available on Zenag's website. So if you just go to Google and you type in Zenag chicken, you can navigate to the farming page and find that broiler.
Power reliability remains a major concern for many Papua New Guinean businesses. How does it affect Zenag, and what's needed to improve infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a massive issue for Papua New Guinea. I know the government recognises that, but progress has been slow. From Zenag's context alone, since about midway through last year, we've run 100% on generators. So we had no notice of that at the time, but basically transformers that were being serviced by PPL weren't being serviced. They failed, both on our side and on the side which was providing us power. We were getting all of our power from the hydro power station at Biosecurity, so that's owned by PNG Forest Products, but the distribution from Biosecurity to Zenag is on the PPL distribution line. Now, I know this is not a unique situation, but it's an enormous cost to producers like us, and it's an enormous cost to the manufacturing sector across the country. To put it into perspective, our power costs as a result of having to burn diesel to generate power have doubled, and of course that was unbudgeted. We didn't expect that to be happening. So we're spending just under $1 million kina a month to generate power that we didn't before. And of course, because of our commitment to the government, we've been very conscious about trying to wear those costs and find savings in other parts of our business rather than passing them on in prices. We're also hopeful that situation is not going to be forever. PNG Power is saying they've purchased more transformers and they're on their way. We hope that happens very soon because it's expensive. But power is a massive issue for PNG. I think there's more and more options these days for people to produce their own power, whether that be solar is obviously probably the simplest in terms of that. I think what the government needs to do is make it much easier for private sector to invest in the power sector to support their own power needs. The fact of the matter is PNG is desperately short of power. We need everybody investing in power generation, and as long as that's done safely, what we need is the government to remove the hurdles to investment, and a lot of that's just policy.
Right. I just stopped in my tracks when you said since mid-year last year, you've just been fully operational on generators.
Correct, yeah. So
Wow.
it's, as I said, that the fuel burden alone is
Yeah.
significant. We're talking about sort of over 140,000 litres a week that we're having to generate across the whole business. Not all, most of that's on generators, but it's very expensive and should be an unnecessary cost. We are investing in solar. But again, there's still some uncertainty about how much solar you can invest in before you face regulatory hurdles, and they're the types of things that we need the government to clarify. If a business wants to generate 100% of its own power with renewables, the government should be welcoming that investment.
Exactly.
Not putting barriers in the way.
Exactly. Because I bring this up, I just wanted to pause on this point, because we see a lot of call outs, right, particularly from the government and other sectors, about getting the mum and dad, the subsistence farmers, to go into agriculture. But I keep getting stopped to say, okay, how do they actually go in with all these barriers and, with power, and just for the average person to go in the first place, it presents a difficult challenge, let alone having to foot the cost of power is... Yeah, it's almost impossible right now.
Sure. So I guess from the poultry perspective, we're a little bit fortunate in that there are alternatives to keep birds warm, and solar lighting, for example. You're seeing a lot more small-scale solar lighting that's available now. So from a smallhold poultry sector, there are alternatives, and you can still produce chickens without full reliable power. But once you start to scale your business and you start to automate, then power is such a crucial input.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. We'll move on now just on another point to do with the costs. With costs rising, how does Zenag manage to keep chicken prices stable for consumers? I know you said you try to cut across other areas of your business, but could you just give us a little bit more information on that?
Sure. So the biggest cost for any poultry producer is stock feed. That's the biggest input. To give you some perspective, about 70% of the cost of a table egg is stock feed, and about 55% of a kilo of chicken is stock feed. That's the biggest thing that it impacts chicken prices. With the exchange rate falling, obviously stock feed becomes more expensive. I guess the thing that we've been a little bit fortunate in the poultry industry is that most of the grains and stock feed comes out of Australia. And even though the kina is pegged against the US dollar, as the kina is depreciated against the US dollars, the Australian dollar is also for the most part depreciated against the US dollar for the last couple of years. So that's helped a little bit. That might not always be the case, but the way that we look for savings is to drive performance in our business. You make your money in poultry on how effectively you convert that stock feed into kilos of chicken, and that's about making sure that your shed environments are on point, and that your mortality rates are as low as possible. Your processing is very efficient. That's how we.
And with limited access to foreign exchange, how has this impacted Zenag's ability to import essential supplies, and what could be done to ease the pressure in these situations?
Well, I will say on a positive note, and for the first time in a few years, we really have seen quite a big improvement in access to foreign exchange in the last few months, which is great. Obviously, I think that's perhaps more interventions from the central bank, but perhaps the strategy of depreciating the kina has also helped. And I guess the strong commodity prices has helped with exports, and exporters are bringing more foreign currency back. So that's not as much of a pressing issue as it has been.
That's good news. That's really good news. Security costs are rising for many companies. What's been the impact on Zenag, and what's needed to improve the environment for businesses like yours?
Yeah, security is it's an ever-present one in PNG, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, you face security challenges. I guess in agriculture in particular, because your operations are often over a big area, security is a real challenge. So about 10% of our staff are security. We've spent millions on security infrastructure, whether that be towers or electric fencing or very sophisticated surveillance cameras. And I guess that's just a fact of life, unfortunately. I can't see how that's going to improve until we have more Papua New Guineans employed with meaningful opportunities. But I would say that in the last couple of years, Zenag has really fostered some positive relationships with the police, and we're seeing improvement there. But ultimately, it comes back to accountability at community level. We're all aware that, unfortunately, a lot of the crimes are really perpetrated by a small percentage of the population. And what happens is, if those people aren't brought to justice quickly, then it escalates. If the community's proactive and the police are proactive about following up on crimes, and It's certainly in our experience, we've found that you can control it, relatively well. Obviously, it's more challenging once you get into a bigger place. The dynamics of crime in Moresby is very different to the dynamics of crime at Zenag Farm. But yeah, an enormous challenge for the government and an enormous challenge for PNG.
Thank you for being with us. You're watching Coffee with Lewa. If you're enjoying the program, please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share the link right now with your family and your friends to start a watch party. We're happy you're here.
And how do security risks affect long-term growth and investment in Papua New Guinea's agriculture and industrial sectors?
Look, I mean, again, it depends on your scale, right? So it's one of those, it's an extra cost is what it comes down to. Security, regardless of where you're going in Papua New Guinea, security is just something you have to invest in. Your security infrastructure, because you're going to get challenges. So it drives up cost. And I suppose, for investors like us that have been in PNG for a long time, we understand that risk, but from an outsider's perspective, I can understand why that's probably quite daunting. If you're not used to having to protect your assets on a 24/7 basis, I can understand why that would be a concern for foreign direct investment. For PNG investors, I think most PNG investors are pragmatic about those risks and put infrastructure in place to mitigate it, but those come at a cost. I think, again, the crime thing's such a complicated area, but ultimately for me, it's about creating opportunities for people. So how do we create more jobs? How do we create more opportunities for people to have their own businesses like we do in the poultry industry through SME sector? They're the kind of things that I think are going to engage the population and hopefully have less issues with crime.
Well said. I couldn't agree with you more. Imported poultry products are a hot topic right now. How are they impacting local producers, and what policy changes would you recommend to create a fairer playing field?
Yeah, look, this is it really comes back to that biosecurity point I made at the start of the discussion, right? So uncooked poultry imports present a real risk of bringing disease, and depends on where they're coming from. Countries like New Zealand, for example, very clean. Until recently, that we've had no problems with product coming in from New Zealand. In fact, the poultry industry, the commercial players import product from import their genetics, so their breeding stock from New Zealand, because it's a very clean place. And has very few avian diseases that are a threat to Papua New Guinea. But other countries, we've seen illegal product coming in from China. That's a massive issue. They've got all sorts of poultry diseases that we don't want here, including bird flu. And obviously, on an ongoing basis, we've had a lot of concerns about Australian product coming in here. The fact of the matter is that what ends up in Papua New Guinea is the stuff that most farmers, that the producers in those countries don't want. So we ended up with sort of their scraps, and that can be very disruptive for our market, as well as presenting a biosecurity risk. It makes it very hard for local producers to meaningfully compete in the market, because we're not competing on an even playing field. We're sort of getting stuff that's dumped. Dumping laws are very difficult to prove, but that's what happens. We get old layers, old breeders, the parts of the bird that those countries don't want. If we have a look regionally, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, they all enforce cooked-only policies. So that means that any poultry product that's imported into those countries has to be cooked. Now, first and foremost, that's to keep diseases out of Australia, New Zealand and Fiji. But the other part of that is it also ensures that their domestic poultry requirements are met by domestic producers. So it gives them food security. It also creates economic opportunities for Australians, New Zealanders and Fijians. It brings capacity, agricultural and manufacturing capacity in those countries, and that's really what we're looking for. We've had ups and downs on this subject, but ultimately we've had some parts of government that have been very supportive, and I know that the current secretary for the Department of Agriculture and Livestock, Dr. Sergi Bang, he understands the challenges and he's very supportive. He's working very closely with industry, but we still are seeing illegal product come over the borders. We know there's a lot of issues with NARCIA, our Biosecurity Authority. There are some very competent people that work at NARCIA, but they haven't had a fully elected board for over 10 years. And that vacuum of leadership is really been reflected in some of the problems that we're seeing. We saw the new biosecurity bill passed last month. That gives NARCIA more teeth, which is excellent. We know that the election of a full board is imminent. I believe part of that process, they're going to be electing a new managing director of NARCIA. So there's a real opportunity for a great reset. But we do need a commitment from government to ensure that we keep PNG free of diseases. And unfortunately, we haven't seen enough in that area to date.
Also, could you share your view on the current tariff structures and their impact on local competitiveness?
Yeah, look, I mean, tariffs is it's a complicated one because we all know, and it doesn't matter if you're in poultry or biscuit manufacturing or in soft drinks, PNG is a challenging place to be a manufacturer. And I guess that the idea of tariffs is to just even the playing field against those countries that don't have the same challenges as us, that don't have the security issues, that don't have the power issues, that don't have the transport infrastructure issues that we have in PNG. So I think that there should definitely be a place for those tariffs until those issues are addressed. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't say too much more than that. I do know that the other challenge with tariffs is, of course, if you know, what we've seen in some of the poultry imports coming in is that you'll have producers have dual invoices. So they'll have one that they use for customs, and that's got lower values on it. So effectively, they don't pay as much of the tariff as they should. And then they'll have the actual invoice that they give to the importer that might be settled overseas. So they're the kind of challenges that you face with that. But ongoing.
Ongoing, yes. You mentioned the Biosecurity Bill 2025. What are the key actions government must take, you mentioned some earlier, to be efficient and effective in the implementation of that bill, especially across rural and remote provinces?
Yeah, I think to start with, they need to get the accountability structures right at NARCIA. So I know NARCIA, I think it's just had a name change to Biosecurity PNG. I don't know if that's effective yet, but NARCIA needs a properly elected board with private sector representation. They need a new managing director. The current one in there is acting, and you know, we've seen the challenges that have come up as a result of that leadership vacuum. And there also needs to be a recognition that they need to work with PNG farmers and PNG businesses to improve this situation, because ultimately we're all on the same team. We all want the same thing. You know, we all want to keep PNG disease free. But the private sector are the ones that are going to be investing in capacity in the agricultural sector. The private ones are really the main, the sector that faces the greatest risks of a disease outbreak. And so NARCIA or Biosecurity PNG needs to be working very closely with the private sector to mitigate those risks, give investors insurance that the right policies are in place so that they feel confident about investing significant amounts of money in the capacity that we need in PNG, because it doesn't matter what you're looking at, PNG needs investment. You know, our people need opportunities, our people need jobs, we need capacity. We want domestic food security, that needs investment, but we need to get the policies right.
Yeah, absolutely. And what roles do ordinary citizens and poultry farmers need to play for this new framework to have real lasting impact?
Well, the Poultry Industries Association is, you know, very actively engaged you know, with both at the political level, but also with NARCIA to try and get the right policies in place. I guess what we've really struggled with in the last couple of years is that we haven't had a leadership at NARCIA that is really wants to work with the private sector. And I'm optimistic that can change, and there's the right changes that have been made, but that's what we really need.
And Zenag's community support, like egg donations, is always appreciated. How do these initiatives reflect your company values?
Yeah, look, Zenag's been around since 1946. We are very passionate about Papua New Guinea, and we also see the fact that there's a lot of challenges in Papua New Guinea, and the community faces a lot of challenges. So we try to do our bit where we can. Some of those initiatives include egg donations to the Lewa General Hospital and the POM General Hospital, or to key charities like Cheshire Homes. But some of it also includes school programs, particularly the rural schools around Zenag Farm. We invest quite a lot of money in their infrastructure. And we have a schools program that goes out and tries to educate kids about healthy eating and nutrition. But yeah, I mean, we try to do our bit, because ultimately we're here long term, and we benefit from seeing a healthy and resilient community as well.
Commend you all for that. Thank you so much, because we've seen a lot of stunted growth in our children of late, especially in the last decade or so, I guess, with the change in diets. And so to see your company take a front stand in that is really, really inspirational. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
What's next for Zenag?
What's next for Zenag? Well, I mean, there's an enormous amount of investment happening at Zenag. We spent over 65 million in production capacity last year alone. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of growth opportunities. A lot of that money was spent on the back of the fact that the government, you know, assured us that there was going to be clear biosecurity policies in place that would allow that investment to happen. And what we really need to see is that continue to happen, and we'll continue to invest, continue to employ more people, and continue to build food security in Papua New Guinea.
Thank you. And looking further ahead, what's your vision for agriculture and the industrial growth in Papua New Guinea? What's needed to truly unlock our potential as a whole?
That's a challenging question. I guess there is no one answer to that. What I would encourage the government to always do is seek consultation with the private sector. Farmers know what their challenges are. They know what their bottlenecks are, and they'll tell you what they need in order to be able to invest more money and build capacity in PNG. So I think the more the public and the private sector are consulting, and genuinely consulting, not just writing a bill and then sort of speaking to the private sector to get a token tick before it gets passed, but genuinely seeking to understand the issues and work with the private sector to address those issues, I think will go a long way to building capacity in PNG.
Wonderful. Stanley, thank you again for joining us on Coffee with Lewa. Your insights have given us so much to think about, from national policy to local farms that feed our families. We wish you and the Zenag team continued success. And from all of us in Papua New Guinea, thank you for all the phenomenal work that you're doing.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate the invitation.
To our viewers, it's your turn now. Let's take this conversation to the comments section. Let us know your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this and want to see more, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share this with your family and your friends to keep the dialogue flowing. We appreciate you and we thank you for being here. And we'll see you on the next one right here on Coffee with Lewa.